Madam President, and thank you, members of the General Assembly. Every year since 1992, we have gathered here in this body for what can only be described as political theater, in which the Cuban regime tries to convince itself, tries to convince its international supporters, and tries to convince the Cuban people that the world holds it blameless for its attacks on the fundamental freedoms of its citizens and for the abysmal, despicable economic consequences of its policies. Some of you, many of you, frankly, some as recently as this morning, tell us privately that since the regime cares so much about this vote, that you just want to appease it. You just want to kind of go with the flow and go with the crowd. That's what you tell us privately. But, colleagues, let me suggest today that you do something different this year. The United States and the Trump administration wants to set the record straight when it comes to this resolution and to correct the fake news, the misinformation, and this false reality the regime seeks to create year after year with this vote. The facts are this is an illegitimate and brutal regime that seeks to cast itself as the victim of aggression while plainly describing itself as, quote, the enemy of the United States. It's located just 90 miles off our shore. It conspires and it collaborates with enemies and adversaries of the United States against our interests. The facts are that this regime supports terrorist organizations around the globe. It is allowing mercenaries to fight in the war in Ukraine. It's propping up the Venezuelan regime, and it aids cartels. The facts are that these cartels that it props up are trafficking people, drugs, and weapons, and is aiding and abetting instability in our hemisphere. They undermine democracies in our hemisphere.
I'm very sorry to interrupt, but there's a point of order from Cuba.
Sure. Madam President,
yes, we have to give the floor to the point of order and the representative of Cuba.
Artículos 71 y 68 del reglamento. El representante permanente de Estados Unidos no solo miente desviándose sustantivamente del tema, sino que se expresa de manera grosera y prepotente contra su presidencia, contra la dignidad de esta Asamblea y de los Estados miembros. Lo hace con una incultura, rudeza y grosería que no se admite en este magno y democrático recinto. Señor Walsh, esta es la Asamblea General de Naciones Unidas, designa ni es la Cámara de Representantes.
I ask the distinguished representative of the United States to continue.
thank you, Madam President. I'm well aware of the location of which we're speaking. And this is also not a communist, illegitimate legislature in Havana. This is a place where we talk in facts, and the facts are the Cuban regime has undermined democracies in our hemisphere. It has oppressed its own people, and it steals from its own people so that, quote, regime insiders can maintain their elite status. I don't need to say that on any type of chat. I'm saying that in front of the entire world, and it is well known within the Western Hemisphere for those who closely pay attention. So I would suggest that our member states stop appeasing the regime with their votes and instead use this vote to send the world a message. I would encourage you to send the regime in Havana a message and send the Cuban people a message. Stop using this vote to blame them and blame all of its economic problems on the United States. No government in history has ever made a communist economy work. Even fellow socialist and communist states are urging Cuba to open its economy to its own people, allow its people to thrive. And the only thing equal about communism and socialism is that everyone is equally miserable and poor. And so just to correct the record, and colleagues, please hear me on this term blockade, on this term embargo, the United States has always allowed Cuba to import food, to import medicine, and to import humanitarian goods. In fact, last year in 2024, the United States exported. I've seen the ships leave the ports in Florida and in Louisiana. It exported $500 million of goods to Cuba, over $585 million of food, of humanitarian aid, of medicine. Colleagues, how is that a blockade? I just heard a colleague here before me describe this as a blockade. $500 million. And in fact, the Cuban regime can trade with any of you, with the entire world, with the rest of the Western Hemisphere, with our friends in Canada and elsewhere. There's no blockade. A blockade would be preventing anything from coming to Cuba. So please stop repeating this propaganda that allows the regime to then go back and have an excuse for its own failures. Let's stop spending these citizens' meager resources on high-end tourist hotels that sit empty while the people are starving. Tell the regime you've seen the investigative reporting about Cuba's military-controlled companies sitting on billions of dollars in offshore and overseas bank accounts, again, while its own people's needs are ignored. Please share with the regime its governance failures that have driven out 2 million Cubans, have left Cuba, not coming in, they are leaving, and remind the regime to start prioritizing the needs of its own people. But most of all, it's time the regime is to be held accountable for its own human rights record, for its forced labor to make charcoal and cigars, for the 700 political prisoners that it continues to hold unjustly in prisons under horrific conditions and the constant threat of abuse and torture, the people that are rising up due to the oppression, that are arrested and treated brutally, and let's hold it accountable for participating in the human trafficking of medical professionals abroad that provides a source of cash for the regime. So, colleagues, you can send this message in a very easy way. Abstain from this vote or vote no with the United States. We enthusiastically welcome your support, and we enthusiastically and strongly encourage you to stop propagating this propaganda. There is no blockade. That is absolutely false. Let's send a message today, colleagues, in keeping, as the Cuban delegation has just said, in keeping with the history of this body, in line with human rights, in line with human dignity, and in line with a better future for the Cuban people. I thank you, Madam President.